Darrington Press just released a new class onto the Void, the Summoner, which was the class that was teased in the Daggerheart anniversary stream by Jeremy Crawford. So in this video, we will be going through the new class and see what it is all about. So normally I would just jump into the abilities/features of this class. But first I do want to talk about the domains that it has access to, which are the Blood and Splendor domain, which the Blood domain is the domain that's being currently playtested in these current batches of the Void that was originally tied to the Blood Hunter class. So with Blood and Splendor, it gives the Summoner a kind of Blood Priest type of vibe and power set, along with its abilities that we'll be talking about shortly. But I like these two domains and the possibilities of how they will interact with each other. So the main feature that the Summoner gets is Summon Entity. You can summon otherworldly entities, fate spirits and other entities from your subclasses. Each entity is associated with a summoning circle. Mark a stress to summon a number of entities equal to your tier and add them to their appropriate circles. You can hold a total number of entities equal to your level. Summoned entities stay within very close range, can perform harmless tasks within that range, and they cannot be targeted. If a task requires an action roll, make a spellcast roll to command the entity. First circle, Fate Spirit. After an adversary within very close range makes a successful attack roll, you can command a Fate Spirit to force the adversary to re-roll the attack. The spirit then disappears. So this is obviously the main bread and butter of this class, and its following subclasses. And I will say, it's a very cool and unique ability, especially at max level when you can have 10 summons at once, and just really cause some chaos. Although as a GM, I don't love the idea of having that many minis or tokens on the field at once. Otherwise than that, the baseline Fate Spirit is pretty cool, with being able to reroll enemy attacks, although it only really works on enemies that are going to be up close and personal. So if you're facing anyone at range, it kind of stops being as useful, and makes it feel like you don't have a class. I personally think it should just be targeting your allies that are getting hit, and not the adversary, since then you just gotta stay up and close to your party, and not face-tanking the enemy, which is kind of not the vibe of this class. Next, its Hope feature. Aid of Spirits. Spend 3 hope to conjure otherworldly aid. Distribute 2 hope among 1 or more PCs within far range, and you clear a stress. This ability is a pretty cool support ability, since you can either really boost up one of your party members with 2 hope, possibly giving them enough to activate their hope feature, or spreading it among 2 of them, all the while clearing some of your own stress, which this class relies on heavily. So overall, a pretty good ability that plays into the support nature of this class, while refueling its own features. Next, let's talk about the Summoner's subclasses, Necromancy and Theurgy. Let's start with its darker twin, Necromancy. As its foundation, it gets its second circle summon, Shambling Corpse, which grants them the following abilities. Hunger of the Grave. Make a spellcast roll against a target within far range. On success, your Shambling Corpses move to attack the target, dealing 5 physical damage for each Shambling Corpse before returning to you. 1 Shambling Corpse then disappears. Grim Harvest. When an adversary within far range marks its last hit point, you can summon 1 Shambling Corpse without marking a stress. So Shambling Corpse is a pretty solid ability. At low level, it's very useful against minions, outright destroying them, which can then be used to summon even more corpses with your Grim Harvest ability, and can do decent damage on lower damage threshold adversaries. While at higher tier of play, it can do at least 2 HP damage for every turn, if you have all of them being corpses, but at that point it does fall off a bit in the damage department, since you're unlikely to have all of them being Shambling Corpses. But regardless, with the Grim Harvest ability, you don't have to use stress on summoning them, so it kind of becomes your default summon that is used to make use out of dead enemies. For Specialization, it gets its third circle, which are Ghosts, which grant them the following. Ghostly Protectors. While you have any ghost summoned, your evasion has a +1 bonus, as they swirl around you in protection. Spectral Terror. Make a spellcast roll against a target within far range. On a success, one of your ghosts flies to the target to scare it, causing it to mark stress. That ghost then disappears. I will say Ghostly Protectors is much better than Spectral Terror, since unless you're fighting a creature that relies on using stress for devastating abilities, it's much more effective and optimal to just keep the ghosts around indefinitely to practically get a permanent +1 bonus to your evasion, making you much harder to hit, and especially as a more squishy class, I personally think it is a much better option. But if you are facing an enemy that does use stress quite frequently, then Spectral Terror is incredibly useful at stressing them out. Lastly, for their Mastery feature, they get their 4th circle, which grants them Death Knights. which grants them the following. Deathly Warrior. When you succeed on an attack roll with Hope, you can instead succeed with Fear, causing your Death Knight to rush at your target. Add 2d12 to the attack's damage, and then return to you. Knightly Bulwark. When you take severe damage, the Death Knight takes one of those hit points instead, and then disappears. As a capstone feature for the subclass, it's pretty good. Since with Deathly Warrior, at minimum your character's proficiency is at a 4, which means at base we're doing 4 dice worth of damage, which let's say we're using a tier 4 Greatstaff, which the Greatstaff is the recommended weapon to use with this class. At base we're doing 4d6 plus 9 damage, which on average is 23 damage, which at tier 4 really isn't cutting it in the damage department. Granted, probably at this tier of play you'll all have better weapons than this example, but with the Deathly Warrior ability, it takes it to an average of 36, which does make it much more competitive in the damage department, doing 2 points of hit point damage on all but the most tanky adversaries, while Knightly Bulwark just gives you more self-sustain by having it tank severe damage for you. With armor, you could reduce it to only minor damage, making the summoner at high tier play very tough to take down. The other subclass option for the summoner is Theurgy, which is all about summoning angels and other celestial beings. Starting with their foundation ability, with their second circle now being used to summon angels, which grants them the following. Angelic Presence. While you have any angels summoned, you have advantage on presence rolls to influence others, as the angelic power around you inspires awe and fear. And Hopeful Strike. When you succeed with Hope on an attack roll, you can command one angel to deal an extra 1d10 magic damage to the target. The angel then disappears. This feature, in my opinion, is pretty good, since unlike the other subclass, it gives the summoner out-of-combat utility by making them the face of the party. And with Hopeful Strike, it's able to dish out more damage in combat, which at low tiers of play is very strong with 1d10 of damage, but it does kind of drop off at the higher tiers of play, but it is still useful for majority of play. A specialization to get their third circle, which grants them Archangels, which gives them the following. Divine Commander. While you have any Archangel summoned, the extra damage of your Hopeful Strikes is a 1d12 instead of 1d10. Heavenly Aid. You can command an Archangel to do one of the following. Fly you or an ally within very close range to a location within far range, or help an ally within close range without spending Hope. The Archangel then disappears. Similarly to the specialization for Necromancy, one is much better than the other, since Divine Commander does upgrade Hopeful Strike, but only to a d12, which is only about an average of 1 point of extra damage, which really isn't that good. Honestly, I think they should just upgrade the d10 to 2d10, to give the damage a much better upgrade. Heavenly Aid is really what you want for this feature, since not only can you use it to move out of danger, or into a better position either for yourself or one of your allies, or honestly a much stronger use is giving out free advantage to your allies, which is incredibly powerful and can turn the tide of a roll really quickly. Lastly, for its mastery, it gets its fourth circle, Divine Manifestation, which does have a limit of that you can only summon one at a time, but in turn grants you the following. Hallowed Hope. When you summon a Divine Manifestation, place 3 extra Hope dice on this card. When you make an action or reaction roll, you can roll and expend 1 Hope die from this card, along with your normal Hope die, and use the Hope die with the highest result. When there are no dice left on this card, the Divine Manifestation disappears. This ability is really strong, since it gives the summoner a more traditional advantage system from D&D and other D20 systems, on top of it being able to stack with regular advantage from Daggerheart. So overall, a really strong capstone for this subclass. And that is the Summoner class for Daggerheart, at least the Void version of this class, which we shall see if it ever comes to light in an actual book, and with whatever changes it makes along the way. But for its current iteration, I think it's a very strong and unique class, that granted does still need some tweaking for some of its abilities in higher tier of play, but it doesn't take away from how I feel about it as a whole, and very excited to see what future holds for it. If you enjoyed this video, why not leave a like and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Daggerheart. Bye for now.